It was the first edition.
2010, yeah.
Yes, 2011 was in Atibaya that you were also
right,
there.
right, yeah. No, I was only in the winters, in the summer, in the school, something
Right.
school. Yeah.
Well. We are ready to move to our Ask Me Anything session with Professor Dunkelman, and we have prepared some questions for him, but the rules of the game are the following. You may want to ask any question to him, to Orr, but the only thing is that we would really appreciate if you can turn on your camera if you want to ask questions, and please do it because it is this rare opportunity to ask questions to Orr. Maybe to break the ice, I have some questions prepared to Orr, but if you have one question, just don't doubt, please act. So Orr, one question for you, or that I have is, would you say that proposal of new crypto standards is for the better? All these standards that are being proposed in all the areas of crypto? Many areas?
The answer is yes and no. Yes, it is important because we have new tasks. For example, standards for format preserving encryption, standards for post-quantum cryptography, standards for MPC. There is a need for that. And usually we like to think of ourselves like, yeah, we're completely disconnected from the world. It doesn't really matter. Or for example, why would someone take a cipher that was standardized by ISO? ISO is not NIST. They standardize essentially anything that looks reasonable. And the thing is, not everybody are crypto proficient. And if you go to some company and you tell them, I want you to install encryption, I want you to implement encryption, they just pick a standard and they're using it. And this is why we need to have these standards for post-quantum cryptography and for MPC and for format fully homomorphic encryption and.
Lightweight crypto.
Lightweight crypto. The problem is this changes a bit the way we work, and especially, so we all know that competitions are a very good thing. They motivate us, the Caesar competition, the AS competition, the lightweight crypto competition, the post-quantum competition. Okay, first of all, we're not competing athletes. Second of all, they give us a focus which is slightly different than what we used to do. So now, for example, if you consider the lightweight crypto competition, you have a 3 years or 4 years process that is a bit adversarial, but that's okay. It's not that issue. That they need at the end of the process to have a winner. And ISO, again, I'm picking on ISO because I'm representing Israel at ISO in some stuff. But ISO says you have, if you won a competition like the AS, the lightweight, the post-quantum, that means that you received enough attention. Now, the thing is that not everybody are testing everything. I mean, you can't follow all the competitions. When the SHA-3 competition was running around, the first round had 64 submissions. We can't analyze as a community 64 submissions. So yeah, of course, some were immediately broken and some of them were completely kicked out very early. But even in the second phase, there were 15 submissions and we had 1 year or so to analyze them. And each of them is very different. And unlike block ciphers where we have a better understanding, hash functions, we have less of understanding. And at the end of the process, it wasn't, I mean, the winner is okay, everything is fine, and then there was process, and I'm not complaining about the selection, I'm talking about the process. There's too much competition going on. Now, that's a problem, especially if you don't have the attention span. And I think many of us don't have the attention span to cover all the competitions and all the standardization efforts running around. I mean, a few years ago, ISO tried to standardize Simon and Spec as ISO standards. Nobody caught that. I mean, at some point, eventually we did catch that. The Russians tried to push Kuznechik, which is their new cipher, into standards. And only because there was, so if they would have done it before the NSA tried Simon and Speck, and we didn't have the support. So now we know how to organize to push things away from ISO. But this is a process that happens. IETF, the same issue. I mean, there are standards at IETF, not like ISO, which is like has a political and national trait to it. IETF, there are standards that nobody looked at their security in a very committee. I'm just mentioning a paper that hopefully a student of mine and I will finalize eventually, showing some problem in one of them. And there are problems. And because we don't have the capacity for that, we don't have the capacity. So it's a problem here. So I'm in favor, but we need to do less of them.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, do you have questions for Professor Orr? Any questions? I have many questions, so I don't want to. But if you have questions, go ahead.
Yeah, I had one.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's higher.
Hi.
It's a kind of related question to what he was describing, but more probably when I hear his thoughts more, deeply about the cryptanalysis band and the designers band. How do you see them? Is one too strong, or too many people is focusing on designing and the constructive part of the stuff, and maybe the cryptanalysis part is given less attention? And if that's the case, then which ideas we can, or what we can do as a community to promote one side to grow in comparison with the other one, if there is an imbalance?
So I'm going to say about the symmetric community, because in public key, I guess it's slightly different, and the incentives work slightly differently. For us, designing and analysis is relatively, I mean, as part of the design, you need to analyze. And again, in the public key community, I mean, you take the hardness problem and then you build things around it, and you build the construction, and there are many things and many parameters to decide upon, but it's not like you actually do differential cryptanalysis of the cipher that you just suggested. The process is slightly different. So in the symmetric key case, they are very interleaved, and especially in the context of competitions. Like, if I want to make sure that my cipher is being selected, I have two options. First of all, make sure that my cipher is the best, and of course my cipher is the best. And second of all, shoot down all the competition, which also increases my chances of winning. And we saw this in AES. In AES process, it went very well. And this is why people started to do competitions. And after AES, we had Nessie. And after Nessie, we had eStream. Sorry. And after eStream, we had SHA-3. And after that, we kind of like the idea of competitions. But there is sort of an imbalance. And I think that it mostly related to the fact that it's nicer to design things at the end. I mean, I like breaking stuff. I'm very happy breaking stuff. But when you break stuff, you make someone else miserable. When you build stuff, you make yourself happy and have a potential to become a bit miserable. And I think this is the game to some extent. So should we have somewhat more balanced? Yes. Can we do that? No, because my personal incentive is to win the competition, right? If there is now going to be another competition for hash functions or block ciphers or something, I'm going to put a suggestion just for the, you cannot win the lottery without buying a ticket. And, it's good for your career. It's good for your ego. It's good for many things to win the competition. Like, I'm looking at lightweight crypto systems. When I started my postdoc, my first postdoc in 2006, Bart Prenil told me, lightweight cryptography, we need to design something. So I sat with Christophe de Canier and Miroslav Kanjevich. I'm sorry, the Serbian names are not that easy for me. And we designed a cipher. And I think we were the second after present. I mean, in the really lightweight ciphers. And we optimize some things different. And of course, in lightweight, you have lightweight in area, throughput, latency, power consumption, energy consumption, and it just pick the metric. If we were the first, not like present, everybody would have been using Catan today instead of present. By the way, please use Catan and use present. Present is a wonderful cipher. But that's the thing. The incentives as a community and the personal incentives are not aligned correctly. And there is no way around it. I mean, when this is the case at the end, you can say, oh, let's ask everybody not to start competitions in the next 3 years. Yeah, and then NIST will do a competition for format preserving encryption. Yeah, I'm going to submit something. So it's very hard to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. One question for you, or which one do you think is better, to have centralized or decentralized IACR conferences?
So personally, I miss traveling. My last flight was in January 2020. And I miss the interaction, I miss the conferences, and I'm looking forward to the point of time where it will be for me and for my wife, and given the fact that we will treat this as something as safe enough to travel abroad. And I understand that, for example, for young researchers, like, I mean, I have my connection of friends, I have my connection of collaborators. I mean, I can do well relatively, even if I don't attend physically. And the advantage of decentralized is now that I can attend conferences, like I can hear only the 5 minutes that interest me from each talk, and I get a better view of what's going on, and everything is online and archived, and everything is fun. I understand it's also good if you come from what is called the global south. Like if you're coming from a country where travel budget is very limited or non-existent, obviously this is significantly better. If you're coming from countries which has issues with passports and visas and that sort of stuff, the same goes. It's better to have this online. On the other hand, you know, I haven't collected a single mile and I wasn't upgraded. And I know it's one thing to, you know, to sit here and have a discussion with you, but it's completely different when we can sit down and discuss things. And even during a lecture, because I understand, you know, I teach over Zoom. So I understand that it's not fun to opening your camera. Maybe it's not comfortable. Maybe your bandwidth is not strong enough. Maybe many good reasons. But then I see most of the screen are black and I'm like speaking to myself. I see Francisco looking at me. I see Valerie sometimes. I mean, it's not fun talking. And I think that the interaction is not as good. So, hi, Alfredo. I mean, you don't have to turn on the camera now. I mean, it's fun. I would like to see you guys, but it's like, what I'm saying is that the interaction looks different. Things work differently. And especially if you want to start new things, it's always like, I can tell you about recently, I collaborated a lot with Eyal Ronen and Nathan Keller and Adi Shamir. And we had a paper we started discussing in December 19. I think it's pre-Corona. So before Corona, I think it's BC, before Corona. And we exchanged some emails, and then we usually meet on a regular basis, but due to several reasons, we haven't met to discuss this before February, and of course, Corona. So we moved everything to Zoom, and now we can do everything over Zoom. For a year, we couldn't advance the research over Zoom. And then one day I took the train and I went to visit Eyal. And suddenly in 4 hours of sitting in the same room, and I don't want to say shouting at each other, but discussing in a very heated fashion, which is very Israeli compatible, we advanced the paper. And 2 weeks later, I came again and we finished the paper. Not writing, but the technical parts, and then because you need the interaction. And I think this is something that we're missing. So I think that we will need to go back to centralized, but support people, again, global south from economical point of view, visa issues. We need to solve this. Global warming, I mean, just throw in everything. Yeah, we will need to solve this.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have questions for Orr? I tell you this, I have prepared a list of questions that Professor Dunkelman doesn't know. So maybe you want to vote which questions do you prefer him to answer. So let me put it in the chat.
Just a second. How do I see the chat?
In the meantime,
Yes, go ahead.
I would also like to ask one question, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the previous topic. That is, and it's very particular to me, maybe not very interesting. What is your experience with with automated assistants and tools for cryptography and frameworks for developing, proving, and defining, and so on? Have you had any particular experiences with that, or something that you think is missing, or some impressions, anything really?
So I have students for that. And automatic tools are very important. It's just that I try not to I mean, I picked this career path not to write code. This is like the last time I wrote code in some project, some research with Nathan. I'm just going to show you the example. So I needed to take the value and rotate it left by 9 bits for efficiency reasons. And I've decided that, obviously, as you probably know, the answer is F7. And this ruined the simulations. I will give you a second to identify the mistake. Okay, I decided that this is the case. Obviously, it's very obvious. And it took me 4 months. And again, another example of why meeting in person is always better. To go to sit with Nathan. Now, Nathan doesn't do any programming in C for that purpose, but he was sitting on, looking at me, making sure that I'm doing that rather than surfing the web. And then I realized that the mistake here was that should be E, and this ruined 4 months of experiments and delays in writing the code. So I'm a big fan of these tools, as long as I don't have to touch them. I have a student working on MILP modeling of some things. I have another student who worked on division trails, finding division trails. You will see the paper, I think in 2 days, I'm not sure, maybe 3 days. I completely lost track of the days. So one of the papers is automatic tools. I know they are very important, both for the cryptanalysis part and for the formal proof checking, etc. I mean, they are very useful, again, as long as I don't have to do that myself. Another thing is that you need to be very careful with these models, because small bugs can be very problematic. I think that unless you have a proof that your code that verifies the proof that you're trying to verify is indeed correct, so you get a meta proof and a meta proof, and this can escalate very much. So we need these tools, and we need better tools. And I mean, both from cryptanalysis point of view, there is a lot of research going on today on automatic tools for finding differentials, for finding linear approximations, for proving that they are not. That's very important. And on the other hand, also for the theoretical side. So big fan of proofs, of tools. Again, I have an allergic reaction.
Not a fan of using them. Yes.
Yeah, as long as I have an interface, this is a summer school. There is a school, so why we must have students as professors.
Yeah.
We need interface to operate machines. And
yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Orr. Well, I have 8 questions. I voted for 0, so the attack that Orr was describing that applies in my case. So if you want one of these questions, or any one that you have in mind, if you find one of these questions that is curious, that if Orr can answer them.
Okay, so
Carla votes for 1.
Could you listen briefly describe the 3 top weirdest things that have ever happened to you in your long, yes, distinguished, not so sure crypto career? Wow. Okay, so you have, I reached crypto by accident, and just to put things in perspective, I graduated from high school a year early, and I went to the Technion, and then somehow I got accepted into the excellence program at the Technion for the undergraduates. And they assign you something that in Israel is kind of weird. In other countries, it may be more common. They assign you an academic advisor. So I was assigned some guy called Eli Biha. And after my first semester, I went to him, and due to some reasons, I had some spare time to do during the second semester. I had some spare time to do an advanced course. And I looked at the list of the courses, and I picked, and I said, oh, the crypto course looks very interesting. I wish I could take it. And then Eli looks at me. And by the way, just to explain, I had no idea that he's the teacher of that course. Not only that the data existed on 2 different systems at the time, my understanding of how the system worked was very different. So he told me, look, I taught this in fall semester, now it's spring semester, I'm teaching advanced crypto course. So take the advanced crypto course. But here are the slides of the crypto course. Read them and everything will be fine. And I'm like, yeah, obviously everything is fine. So I go into the advanced crypto course, and this course is composed of 4 students. There are 4 students in the course. One of them is Alex Biryakov, who is now a professor at the University of Luxembourg. Another guy called Eran Richardson, myself, and a guy whose name is not remembered. So I take the course, and the last meeting of the course, Eli goes into the class and says, well, yesterday the NSA has declassified skipjack. Here is a cipher that the NSA designed and declassified. Let's look at it. Okay, so we start looking at it, and why I don't know the name of the 4th student, because he didn't arrive to the last meeting. What happened is that during this meeting, we had some observations on skipjack. So Eli later called Adi, discussed the observations that we had, and he wrote a small report on his website, and then we continued working, and the paper has improved, and at the end, it became a paper at SAC, at Selected Areas in Cryptography 98. This was my second undergraduate studies semester, and this is life. So my first conference and was FSC 99 AES. So Eli decided I'm suitable to be his research assistant, and I thought, like, wow, someone comes into the class, gives you some cool thing to do, and you get into trouble with the NSA. I'm up for that. So I go to FSC 99, which was co-located with AES, the second AES workshop in Rome, and I was 18 and a bit at the time, and I go to the conference, and my first lunch, for example, I thought, oh, let's sit with the NSA guys. I'm sure if I'm going to sit with the NSA guys, they're going to talk about cool NSA stuff, and I'm going to listen to that. And then Adi comes to me and like grabs me and pulls me and says, this is going to be the most boring lunch you're ever going to attend. And okay, so I went with him, and of course I missed the opportunity. This was the last event that Phil Zimmerman from PGP arrived, and he was willing. Back then he was still signing PGP keys, but I didn't feel like, the first conference. So PGP, as I said, FSC was in Rome, and this was AES second workshop, and this was like, again, my first conference, and like, I'm a kid there, and people were, I think the technical term is lunatics, but I'm not sure. So there was one fist fight. Some guy went to some other guy's wife and suggested she's going to ditch her husband to go with him. So the husband punched him. There was, by the way, this is my first conference, just to put things in perspective. I mean, I know that they don't happen a lot in conferences, but again, then there was one of the speakers used to have, now everything is online and everything, we have slides. And back then there were transparencies that you put real slides on projectors. And one of the speakers had the wake up bear. So 1 minute before the end of the talk, he would put the wake up bear. So if you're the next speaker, you will know that this is your turn. And the session chair hijacked the teddy bear. And they started fighting, and the microphone was broken. And again, wow, this is how it works. But then I heard stories about what happened in the 80s at crypto RAM sessions. So apparently there was one time that Moti Jung ran around with a cheerleader outfit. Those of you who've been to crypto for many times, there used to be at UCSB with the cheerleaders, and one crypto in the 80s was a bit more fun. These days I have to settle for things like, seriously, Latin Encrypt in 2010 in Puebla was like the greatest dinner ever. I think that we were 60 or how many cryptographers we were there? Francisco?
Like 60 maybe.
50, 60 people. At the end, so the dinner started at 8 or something like that. 9, I don't know, we ate and then we drank and we drank and we drank. And like, here are the tequilas, here are people drinking whiskey, cervezas, like completely best dinner ever. Seriously, it was fun. I think I've covered 3, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is
that one. Go ahead, Carla.
No, I want to ask if the dinner is what won him the Distinguished Visitor Award.
No, but I learned that some people in our community speak fluent Spanish. My Spanish is limited and not fluent. Ay, agua caliente.
Yeah,
Yes.
I heard so many stories about that Latin Encrypt, and I regret missing it.
Yeah, so I highly recommend you guys to start research. I mean, today we just heard about the Nobel Prize in physics. Invent a time machine, go back to that conference and enjoy the dinner. Or we're going to have another Latin Encrypt there. Okay, so Armando is asking, could I share some recent advances in the Journal of Cryptology? Yeah, the journal is dead. It is pushing the daisies. It has ceased to exist. It has joined the choir invisible. Yes, unfortunately, in the last few years, the number of submissions to the Journal of Cryptology has stopped, and even people were running after and encouraging them, please submit, stopped. So we're about to archive it and so just say, look, those of you who don't know the Journal of Cryptology, this is the leading journal of its field, recreational cryptography. There are actually some good papers there. There are some funny papers and there are some weird papers. Yeah, so unfortunately it's dying. It has died. For years I was trying to get people to submit, but Armando, you haven't submitted anything, so I'm not sure that you're.
I think the barrier is too high, right? So you need to do something to screw something very, very high to get published, isn't it?
No, it has to be recreational. I mean, sometimes it has to be funny. Sometimes it has. I mean, one of the papers there is how to prove cryptography to your kids, how to explain zero-knowledge proofs to your kids, or something like that. It's actually a legitimate design. Of course, there are some jokes. I mean, the first paper on skipjack. So at the end, the main result was that if you remove 3 XORs from skipjack, you can easily break the cipher. And Lars Knudsen thought this was a bit stupid idea. So he published a paper in the Journal of Cryptology about deletion attacks, removing random XORs. So he showed that one-time pad minus 1 XOR is completely insecure. Another paper that I really liked in the Journal of Cryptology was combining RSA and DES security. So back then, just a reminder, 768-bit RSA key was considered to be secure. So the scheme was as follows. You use P and Q, the prime numbers, as the subkeys for DES. So you take, and you have there are 16 rounds of this, 48-bit subkeys. So you can take 768 bits of the subkeys, of independent subkeys, and you say, look, I'm going to publish the public key to be n equals p times q. The private keys are going to be p and q, which are going to be used for the DES encryption. And now, if you cannot factor, then DES is secure. And if you can break DES, then you succeeded to factorize RSA numbers. Like this sort of a result. I don't think the bar is that high. It's just that it was very nice idea, I think.
Yeah. Really nice. Very good. More questions for Orr? Should we ask more questions? Do you feel? It's kind of late for Orr also. I am curious, Orr, about your papers with Adi, with Eli, with Nathan. It has been long time that in many papers, many great papers. Can you share with us something about this relationship with them?
Yes. So as I mentioned, how I started working with Eli, and my first semester as a graduate student, Eli taught the advanced crypto course, the one which I succeeded to publish a paper with him at the end of it. And I was his teaching assistant. And one of the students in the course was this guy. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen Nathan Keller. Did anyone see ever Nathan Keller? No, maybe I'm going to try and share his image. If I will succeed to, first of all, find it, seriously, in a legitimate format. Okay, so just a second, I'm going to try and share it. So this is Nathan. For those of you who don't know Israeli culture, which is sufficiently, I mean, I guess I'm very secular to the point that I'm an atheist. Nathan, as you probably see, is a rabbi. Or you don't see it, but he has a yarmulke and is actually a rabbi. So I had this student, back then he wasn't a rabbi yet, and I had this student with this black yarmulke. This is like in judo. So you have white yarmulkes and you have black yarmulkes, and there is a ranking between them. And now I saw this guy many times when in my last year at high school, I went to some mathematics competitions, and there was always this guy who was one place before me. So I would win place 5 to 12, and he was 3 to 4. I was win, and this happens to be this guy, Nathan, and which I saw him once in a while at the Technion. So he comes to me. So this is the story from his point of view and mine, somewhat interleaved. And he tells me at the end of this course that he took with Eli, look, I have this idea on how to break. So it was the last round of the last few months of the ACE competition. I have this idea how to break various schemes, so specifically Serpent, but it requires programming, and I don't know how to program. So could you help me? Like, I'm the teaching assistant, so I write the code for him, which was kind of weird. But then we found out something that was actually surprising. So we got one paper out of that. And then we had a slightly different idea, so we got a second paper. And then we got another idea, which was a third paper. And since then, we have been collaborating for 20-something years, despite the fact that we are opposite in almost anything besides logic and cryptography. And to the point that, like, the way I work with Nathan when we have the time is I would get a phone call from Nathan. Or what would happen if I will tell you that I can do something in times 2 to the 100? And I'm like, oh, don't tell me. You're going to do that, and then you're going to use this trick, and then it's 2 to the 100. But if you will do that and that trick, it's going to be 2 to the 80. And then Nathan says, no, but you cannot use this trick because Then if you could have used this trick, you could have used that, and then it will be 2 to the 64. And we know that you cannot do this in 2 to the 64. So we go back and forth like that. There was even once that his wife was actually in the delivery room, and I get a phone call from him. Or what would you tell me if I would have told you that I have that and that scheme and I can break it? And like, Nathan, where are you? And like, man, my wife is giving birth. Let's discuss crypto. But we had one of the most amazing papers that we had together. I mean, it was the result of this collaboration. And the thing is that we see things very eye to eye, and like, again, I work with my student of mine, and he has an idea, and then I'm like thinking about it. I reach some conclusions, but something is missing. So immediately it's an email to Nathan. And I collaborated with him for many years, and also when I was abroad as a postdoc. And if I look, when we went through Weizmann, we were postdocs at Weizmann at the same time. So we started collaborating with Adi, who was my host. And since then we formed this group that meets used to meet on roughly daily base, and then weekly base. And now when we succeed to meet and write papers together, this is working with Adi. But my first paper was also with Adi, but I had no idea who Adi is. And until I started doing my postdoc with Adi, I met Adi mostly abroad, not in Israel. Only after I did my postdoc with Adi, I started meeting with him on a more regular basis in Israel rather than abroad. Yes. So I think this explains. And
nice.
About the numbers, I hope that the numbers are going to grow as.
Well, they are already large numbers.
Yeah, Nathan and I are, I think, in the ICR has the CryptDB as one of the categories is the number of collaborations. I think Nathan and I are by far before everyone, including Dan and Tanya, including the Belare Rogaway pair.
Wow.
Well, Dan and Tanya can do various things that Nathan and I cannot do together. So we have our relationship is only platonic. So, yes, he's a very dear friend, and he's an amazing guy, by the way. He just doesn't travel a lot.
So given the different beliefs, do you try to ever convince him, or the other way around? Like, you have different beliefs, and as friends, probably you have many discussions about philosophical discussions, let's say, about everything. And how do you manage that?
At the beginning, we had a few of those. I think that we reached very early the conclusion. I mean, we reached very early the conclusion that we're not going to change each other's views. I mean, I still use him as a moral compass once in a while. When I have a moral question, I ask my rabbi, who happens to be Nathan. I don't always follow his advice because it doesn't fit me, but he's certainly very accommodating to that. No, we don't discuss also politics, even though we have very different political views, obviously. I think that we agree that there is a major difference between the two of us in the assumptions. And if you start with the assumption there is a God, obviously his view is more accurate. And if you start with the assumption that there is no God, then my view is more accurate. And therefore, and we cannot argue about these assumptions. We understand these are assumptions. So, and the same goes for political issues that in Israel, many of them are revolving around the occupation of the West Bank and the Palestinians and that sort of. So again, if you think that God gave the Jews, the Jewish people, the Israelites, whatever you want to call us, the Israel land, then obviously something should happen. If you don't think God did that, other things should happen. And again, it's a discussion on the assumptions which are unproved. But on a daily basis, you don't see that. And I think that Nathan and I have a lot of similarities again in logic and cryptography. Yes, Carla.
Oh, I
You're mute.
like now.
Yep.
I liked when that you say that when you said that you discuss in a heated manner or that you yell at each other. So maybe this is something, I don't know if this where the Latin American culture can maybe coincide, or I don't know, because maybe in Latin America you yell, like you speak loud, but you are very polite. I'm not sure. Like, well, I don't know what is the question, but
Yeah, so I think the thing is that it's not just we're not polite. We don't have it in schools that you raise when the teacher comes in. And when my students call me professor, I'm like, what? Like, we call professors on a first name, usually. I mean, I had this issue that I kept on calling even in discussions in my family. When I was telling to my parents as a first-year student that I was working with Professor Biham. I didn't know who he was Professor Biham. And then later it was Mr. Biham or Biham, and then later it became Eli. But I'm very it's not very characteristical for Israelis to do that. I mean, first semester students raise up in the middle of the class and start explaining to you that you're wrong. On one hand, this is horrible. On the other hand, this is great. And we don't respect authority. And I think it's not just arguing and fighting. Okay, you were right yesterday. You're a very important person, but it doesn't mean that you're right now. And this is the plus side. I can tell you that a friend of my wife she works at Intel. She works at Intel under some context. Told us about the cultural sensitivity training that they did before coming to Israel. And you're like, why do you need sensitivity training to come to Israel? Like, we're normal people. So the story that he heard during his sensitivity training was that a boss from the US comes to Israel for a discussion, and then there is a meeting, and everybody starts shouting, and then he raises an issue, and everybody starts shouting and heated discussion. And at the end of the meeting, the American boss says to the Israeli counterpart, like, I'm terribly sorry for starting this fight. And like the Israeli guy says, no, we actually reached very good conclusions. This was a very good argument, and we had a very good discussion. And yes, we are very heated about that. But I think the advantage to some extent, and this is maybe something to take into consideration, is that yes, undermining authority is like, it's good, of course, to some extent, not overdo it the way we do that. I think like but yeah, one thing I think it's not just the heated discussion. I think it's also the matter of a shared goal. At the end, we all try to reach some goal together, and I think this is something that communities have in common. So maybe, and I think this is one of the problems of the Latin American community in cryptography. Very few people distributed everywhere, so you need to do these sort of things to try and build a community, so you will have people to speak with. So yeah. So I didn't answer your question. There was no question.
Very good. Okay. Maybe there is any final question. If not, then I leave maybe Valerie or no, who is going to close the Ascrypto school? Carla, Patrick, Valerie.
I guess the three of us, no? Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Orr. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you to all that came in the afternoon and all these 2 days. We wait for you tomorrow in Latin Crypt. We're very happy. I want to thank Carla, Francisco, and Patrick because they don't let me alone organizing Ascrypto. So thank you very much. And we will have the videos. We will publish them in 2-3 weeks. We will send you the links. And I will also send you a Google form in case if you want to have the certificate of the course. So you can check if you want the certificate or not. If you don't like it, you don't have to fill the form. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know, Carla, Patrick, or Francisco.
Yeah, well, again, first of all, thank you to the lecturers or here present, but all of them. They did a great job and made this school possible. And then thanking the organizers, Valerie, Carla, Francisco, and the students, of course, attending the course. We are very excited to start the conference tomorrow, Latin Encrypt. So I invite everybody to jump in tomorrow early in the morning and you know, start the conference. We have a very nice program. The keynote speakers are stellar, as you know, and so you shouldn't miss it. And that's it. I don't know if Carla wants to add anything else.
Well, I just want to say shortly that I think this was a lot of fun. So Francisco made it a lot of fun, and Orr also. Sorry that we didn't answer your questions. I guess it reminded you or your Zoom teaching this semester. At least it reminded me of my Zoom teaching. I forgot to, okay, well, this is some, I wanted to say that tomorrow I have to teach Chebyshev inequality, so it was very good that you gave me an example that it doesn't work so well. It was a lot of fun, this session, and all the talks are a lot of, I think they were very useful. And I'm glad they will be online because I think many people will benefit. I certainly know other people that wanted to come and couldn't make it. I think, Valerie, thank you again. This is so well organized. I feel like almost in Colombia, I didn't have the chance to take my picture yet, but I will. And that's all. I hope to see you all tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye.
And see you tomorrow. Goodbye. Yeah.
Bye.
I
Thank
just
you
want to
very
say
much.
something very shortly, that it has
Yes.
been an amazing trip since 2010 when we started Latin Encrypt for the first time. Then the year after in Atibaya, Sao Paulo, the 2011, the first Ascrypto. Many of the people who were in those first editions now are big names in cryptography, including Orr, that was already famous, but now is even more. And it is really nice that we have been creating this community that Orr was mentioning. I can see now young faces among you, and I'm sure that in some few years we will hear even more about you. So it's really great to have this. Alfredo Viola, I think he's not here anymore, but he is one of the co-founders also, and we are very happy and we are very proud of all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francisco. And well, yeah, see you tomorrow, guys.
See you.
Thank you, Orr, and see ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for, although it's so late for you.